What's up, ego hackers? Welcome to the Cutting Edge Podcast, June 20. So today's episode just kind of came out of necessity, and we've been talking a lot about the 16 personality types over the years. But for some reason, one of the most annoying aspects of Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, we've never really actually spent any time going in deep or coming to a level of understanding about. And I personally think it's a poison and should just be eradicated from Jungian analytical psychology as much as possible. Um, just at peaks. I've been getting a lot of questions recently. I just don't know what's been going on with it. But like people are like, yo, C.S. Joseph, what is the difference between assertive and turbulent types? And assertiveness and turbulence is really one of the stupidest concepts I have ever heard. And I absolutely loathe it with a fiery passion. It has served to lead everyone down many rabbit holes of confusion, and it doesn't actually assist anyone in finding out their type. It doesn't actually assist anyone in doing anything, uh, meaningful. All right, so, but yeah, uh, turbulent. People take like the 16personalities.com test, etc., and that's great and all, and then sometimes and they end up getting like results for, oh, you are an INTJ-A or you are an INTJ-T. And honestly, I think that is the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard. It's completely ridiculous. At first I was willing to give assertive versus turbulent, a day in court, and actually, okay, well, wait a minute, maybe this has something to do with people's cognitive focus. And honestly, it really actually doesn't. And, after exploring what assertive and turbulent actually means, according to some of the people out there that use it on a regular basis, I've come to realize that it has nothing to do with cognitive focus whatsoever, like absolutely nothing. Like the Enneagram is probably the closest tool out there for psychological typing that you could utilize in order for identifying cognitive focus, but it still isn't really that great. Our system, which is basically octogram, you could say, octogram. But until then, like for a while, I'm like, oh, maybe I could use assertive versus turbulent to help determine cognitive focus because assertive versus turbulent could mean subconscious focus or shadow focus, right? No, no, no. What it means is bullshit. That's what it means. So, but anyway, uh, yeah. So yeah, let's actually like take a look at what all this stuff actually means, and we're gonna find out from our good friend Eric Thor, who will be educating us this evening. Good old Eric Thor, who hates my guts and says I'm an evil person because I don't know, teach people how to protect themselves from social engineering. Look at his amazing affiliativeness. Good times. So this is from an article of his on personalitopia.com. What a lame name. All right, so what is the difference between the 16 personalities as assertive A or turbulent types? This is according to Eric Thor, and I have another source than just Eric Thor here that we'll be able to read. But anyway, let's discuss what assertiveness and turbulence is. Assertiveness and turbulence are not fixed personality traits. Okay, that might be the most intelligent sentence here, if they're like actually are personality traits. You can learn more. You can learn to become more assertive, or your personal situation or lifestyle can make you more turbulent. Okay. Okay. This just sounds like an NF's excuse for how life is going. That's a little weird. Turbulent types are less like themselves and appear less like their personality type. Okay. And appear less like their personality type. All right, this is very key. If we're going to assume, that assertive versus turbulent is a useful tool. Let's assume that's a useful tool for determining cognitive focus, which was my original premise. Let's assume that for a second. Turbulent types are less like themselves and appear less like their personality type. You could argue that this is shadow focus, basically, because a shadow focused person, they're much less like themselves, whereas a subconscious person is more like themselves. Why is it? When I'm saying like themselves, I'm going to say like their ego, okay? Themselves, let's replace with their ego, okay? Like their ego, right? Turbulent types are less like their ego. So what is more like their ego? Well, if they're subconscious focused, their subconscious shares the same cognitive functions, the four cognitive functions that their ego has, so they would be more like themselves. So already, uh, Eric Thor would be arguing that if you are an assertive person, it's because you are subconscious focused and going in the direction of happiness. But that's not entirely accurate. Turbulent types then would have to be shadow focus based on this. And they appear less like their personality type because their INTJ side, like for me, that's my shadow, the INTJ side of the ENTP is balancing out the ENTP ego. And that's just kind of like the direction. So you could actually say that I'm pretty turbulent. And he's making the argument that, my personal situation or lifestyle can make you more what? Shadow focused? Okay, yeah, sure. I could agree with that. If we're assuming the premise here is that assertive and turbulent have everything to do with cognitive focus in this regard. The problem is that throughout my studies and my observations, personal situation and lifestyle can also affect whether or not someone is subconscious focused or assertive or whatever the hell. Like, because, like, for example, Taylor Swift, she's subconscious focused, and she got subconscious focused because she had parents that were supporting her every step of the way with her creative pursuits, and it went all there. Whereas my life and my upbringing was basically horrible and literal torture. And as a result, it's caused me to be way less like myself and then become more and way less like my personality type because I'm shadow focused. Okay, sure. So within the context of just this section here with Eric Thor's definition, I could argue that, okay, yeah, sure, maybe turbulent is shadow focus and assertive is subconscious focus. However, this is where it gets muddy. I would have been perfectly fine accepting this. Perfectly fine. But when we actually dig into the details, there's a lot of contradictions here. Okay? So he goes on, being assertive does not mean that you do not experience negative emotions or fear or anxiety. Okay, that's not true. If I was subconscious focused, okay, if I was subconscious focused, I'd have a double helping of introverted sensing, which could be a double helping of depravity. It could be a double helping of fear. It could be a double helping of, needing a higher need of personal safety. Okay, that also could be a problem, right? So that's already a contradiction based on our premise. It already contradicts our premise. Being assertive simply means that when you feel that way, you are resolute, resolved, and prepared to take responsibility and work through your feelings in a confident manner. How nice for this INFJ to be explaining this to us. What drivel. This doesn't even help. Turbulent types do not feel in control of their lives or what happens to them. Okay, well, being shadow focused, I could argue, yeah, that's pretty accurate. Not feeling in control of their lives, what happens to them. The thing is, though, is that that's why I became shadow focused. But being shadow focused actually allowed me to have more control over my life and what happens to me. Actually, I would argue that if I was subconscious focused, that this would actually be the opposite, which again contradicts the original premise. Okay. And so they are taken over by their feelings. Okay, thank you, SE inferior and FE parent, for your wisdom. Turbulent types often have a static mindset, meaning they do not feel that their actions matter. You mean you're projecting your INFJ contribution complex onto everybody else, Mr. Eric Thor. because I'm just going to throw that sentence out. That doesn't mean anything. Assertive types have a growth mindset. I completely disagree. Again, with our original premise, I have a growth mindset constantly. It's the only way I can get out of bed in the morning, even though I walk around every day depressed and lonely AF. That's normal. But you don't see me whining and complaining about it. You see me taking action and dealing with it and living through it anyway. Boo hoo. Get off your ass. Okay? He goes on to say that means they believe in their actions will and can change their situation and their better circumstances. Okay, so now he's basically saying that I'd have to be assertive when turbulence up here is actually more of the cause. None of this makes sense. Now let us talk about the 16 personalities when they are assertive or turbulent. Okay, so he goes on. He goes on, and then he's got each of the 16 types listed here in terms of assertive versus turbulent, which I completely disagree with. In fact, let's just skip to mine because that'd be funny. So ENTP-A versus T. Assertive ENTPs are creative, proactive people full of ideas, always working on themselves, learning new skills. Okay, apart from my ego saying, yes, that's what I do all the time, I'm not entirely sure assertive ones do that. The turbulent ENTPs have lots of ideas, but become immediately discouraged if they are not quickly good at the task. No. No. Turbulent ENTPs feel they have to immediately be the best at something or there is no point. Okay, well, the thing is, though, is that ISFJ is outcome focus. And honestly, it's like, I'm not going to do this. And if I'm not getting anything out of it, there's no point. But then again, he was arguing earlier that turbulence would be more attached to shadow focus with his definitions. But now this statement is actually going in the opposite. What the hell, TE Trickster? Assertive ENTPs believe in themselves and feel they can master anything. Yes, I do believe in myself, and I do believe I can master anything. Although I think these might be in the reverse. I think assertive and turbulent need to be reversed. Let's go to ENFP. Let's look at the other any hero. The assertive Okay, well, that's a typo. When ENFPs are assertive, they are curious, enterprising types full of ideas and a desire to make their ideas come to life. How is that different from the ENTP, dude? While they may sometimes feel upset that they're not able to show enough follow through, and while they may feel confused, they're still able to make waves and make change happen in their life. When turbulent, these ENFPs remain on their drawing board, jumping from thing to thing and never certain of themselves. They give up easily or become discouraged quickly if things turn out to be more difficult than anticipated. Okay, I could probably see that, but again, I'd have to make the argue that turbulent and assertive may actually have to be reversed based on the original definitions that he put forward. Okay, that's not going to work. All right, who else do we got here? Let's look at INTJ. The assertive INTJ is ambitious and driven, and even if they sometimes doubt themselves or feel the odds are stacked against them, will still work to do their best to prevail. The turbulent INTJ will instead dive into self-pity, feeling that life is unfair, or that they were cursed to be less than others. Okay, I mean, I could argue FI child superiority complex, but this is more of a subconscious thing, not a shadow thing. The assertive INTJ believes that they can manifest their ideas in the world and make room for themselves. They are confident and prepared to fight. That is more shadow focus. Again, it's backwards. The turbulent INTJ will easily give up or feel outmaneuvered or badly treated by others. No, the ESFP subconscious, which is a starter type, the starter type is the one that easily gives up. ESFP focused INTJs are the ones that easily give up. Okay? Yes, I understand their shadow or their unconscious is also a starter, but it's systematic. Okay? There's a lower chance of giving up. Whereas the ESFP subconscious is interest based. Therefore, there's a higher chance of giving up as a result. Okay? Again, it's backwards. So anyway, I'm not gonna bore you guys with the rest ones. Yeah, yes, Andres, that's basically what Eric Thor is making with his argument right now, is that, A versus T is, the A's are the winners and the T's are the losers. The thing is that he just does not understand the difference between subconscious focus and unconscious focus. And he is describing certain behaviors of these types. And yeah, some of these descriptions are accurate. The problem is that they're completely mislabeled. And because of that, that leads to confusion. But I guess what can we expect from a TE trickster? I mean, it is what it is. Let's verify though. Let's verify what he's saying here. Okay. So core theory, identity, assertive versus turbulent. Now, when people are talking about core theory identity, they're really actually, and this is taken straight from 16personalities.com, the number one 16 personality or MBTI resource on the internet, the absolute number one place to go. Pretty soon that'll be our place, not these people. But if you think about it from an identity standpoint, what are they really talking about? Like, how do people really come to know their identity? It's not enough to know their ego or their nature or the four sides of the mind. It's not enough to do that, okay? But it's not enough. Cognitive focus, however, and understanding cognitive focus is really the pathway with which we can get people to actually self-identify with who they are. Because, like, for example, it's shadow focused ENTPs are extremely rare. I've met way more subconscious focused ENTPs, men and women, throughout my life. I've probably met maybe one or two ENTPs there. I mean, shadow focused ENFPs are also pretty rare as well, which I thought was pretty shocking. Now, granted, Chris Taylor has some opinions about Western society when compared to genders, when compared to which type is going to be subconscious focus versus shadow focus based on certain circumstances. And overall, I agree with his premise and his perspective on that. However, at the end of the day, it's still arguing an aspect of a person's identity. Okay, so that's what the A versus T theory is actually trying to do, is help someone identify with which variant of XYZ type they actually are, right? That's the whole point. So let's continue. Confidence, achievement, and you. The identity scale, made up of the assertive and turbulent personality traits, affects all other scales and indicates how confident we are in our abilities and decisions. Identity triggers the way we react to things life constantly throws us. How do we respond to success and failure? Okay. What actually is cognitive focus at its core? Is it really the identity scale? Is it really all about identity? It's really about your mind, your soul, your persona's ability to adapt. That's all it is. It's literally an adaptation instinct. You cognitive transition to one of the four sides of your mind in order to deal with certain situations. Now, if there are some situations that are more common than others in your upbringing, you're going to cognitive transition to that side of your mind more often. This in turn opens up neural pathways. Those neural pathways, as a result, they're like it's the beaten path. And then when you cognitive transition, you end up preferring or favoring that side of the mind to solve situations because you're used to using that side of your mind on a regular basis, okay? It's all it is. It's adaptation and problem solving. So 16 personalities premise here about how do we respond to success and failure, I'd reword this and I'd say, well, how do we actually adapt, right? Can we handle criticism or feedback from other people? Unexpected events that suddenly change many things or everything, even the unknown future. This is why in season 19 I talk about the life crises. There's quarter life crisis, midlife crisis, three-quarter life crisis, final life crisis, the four crises in a person's life, okay? So the four crises are very, very key, all right? And the four crises usually are like when your mind is trying to finish its development or and begin development of another side of the mind, basically, as you are walking your path to integration of your four sides. The thing is, though, is that yes, that can have an aspect of changing your identity, but really all it is that it's just completing your mind or your brain's ability to adapt to life, basically. And how do we respond or how do we adapt to success or failure? That's really all it happens with. And some people are met more with success, especially because they have enablers in their life. And some people are met more with failure because they have disablers in their life. My theory is that if you are met with failure because of disabling environment and disabling people in your life, you are more likely to be shadow focused. You are more likely because the reason why, I mean, just think about it logically, just think about it. The top four functions in your ego, you use them all the time. But if you are failing over and over and over in your life and not having success as a result of things that you personally cannot control, be it the environment or be it the people in your life or your circumstances, then that failure is going to force you into the shadow side of your mind, into your unconscious, to gain access to cognitive functions that are not in your ego. It's a completely new set of tools. And you get used to using those sets of tools and fighting with those sets of tools in order to adapt to your very high environmental, circumstantial, disabling failure rate. However, if you're in an environment that is conducive to your own personal success, you're being properly enabled by people in your life and the environment, and you have circumstances going for you, guess what? You're going to end up more subconscious focused. Why? Because it's like you're figuring out new ways to use the tools, aka the cognitive functions that are already present in your ego. You see what I'm saying? Like it's already there. You're already using it. Okay. And you're just learning how to use them better because you're used to succeeding with them. So you're improving upon the success that you already have with the top four functions in your ego to begin with and learning better ways of using them, which helps you become more subconscious focused, right? Because you're in this environment that enables your success. But if you're in a disabling environment and having to deal with failure constantly, you have to use other functions that your ego just can't use to solve problems or even adapt. So in order to adapt to that environment, you have to go into your unconscious and use those functions, okay? Now, the superego, the superego is if something gets emergent. It's as if your success becomes your success ends up becoming a threat towards your life, or your failure ends up becoming a threat to your life. Then the superego will eventually have to take over, and that could lead to, I mean, it could lead to death for the person. Honestly, it can be so absolutely uncontrollable as to what happens. It's like Breaking Bad. All of a sudden, you break bad, and that's because you're in your superego because you weren't able to use your subconscious for success, or the success got so good that it ended up blowing up in your face. Kind of like how you're a really good heavyweight boxer champion, and then all of a sudden the mafia's in your face, forcing you and making you their slave because your success was too much. Or maybe you failed too much and all of a sudden you lost an arm. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is an issue. So, this is how our minds are literally adapting within these situations. But is assertive and turbulent actually like the pathway or the map that we use to figure that out? Uh-uh. So, let's continue on. 79% of those with the turbulent trait say they think a lot about their regrets compared to 42% of those with the assertive trait. Okay. Well, already I know this number is a complete bullshit thing because people don't even really know their type to begin with. But that being said, if we were going to assume that turbulent meant they were shadow focused and assertive meant they were aspiration focused, aka subconscious focused, since most people are dealing with failure instead of success in their life, I would say that, yeah, more people would have this struggle, if they're shadow focused versus those who are subconscious focused. I have a lot about regret. I think about regret all the time, but I use that regret as motivation to move myself forward in life because I've had so much failure in my life and I've been trying to overcome failure. It's often like mentally, like myself being shadow focused as an ENTP, I'm constantly in a race to get back to zero, if that makes sense. Trying to get back to zero, right? Like, and this is why I'm like almost always in survival mode. It would be nice to be in thrival mode for once, but my shadow is in there. So yeah. All right, so let's continue. The mind, introversion and extroversion. Oh, I love how they actually spell that properly. And identity skills bookend to our personality model. Together they influence how we interact with our environments. Okay, that's accurate, including the people and the tasks within them. We call the four possible combinations of the two scales strategies, and you can find out more of them on our main theoretical article. But let's explore what the identity scale looks like. So the assertive personality, calm in the store. 93% of those with the assertive identity say they feel confident facing day-to-day difficulties, compared to 62% of those with the turbulent identity. Okay, let's just ignore these percentages, but if we're just looking at shadow focus versus subconscious focus, yes, I would say that would be the case. Assertive individuals are self-assured, even-tempered, and resistant to stress. Okay, I could agree with that. I am very not resistant to stress. They don't worry too much, but this is different from apathy. They aim for goals and want successful results, but they typically won't let nervousness color the path to their accomplishments. Sometimes I do get nervous, but I've learned over time to let go of the nervousness and just not care anyway. They're unlikely to spend a lot of time thinking about their past actions or choices. I used to think about my past actions and choices. Sometimes my past actions and choices haunt me on a regular basis. But guess what? That's what happens to a shadow-focused ENTP, because my INTJ shadow is like, what about my achievements? What about my performance? And it's unhappy that it hasn't been able to do anything. See what I'm saying? According to assertive personality types, what's done is done. So far, I'm pretty decently happy with 16 personalities presentation of assertive versus turbulent, because it's following the premise of subconscious focus versus shadow focus a lot more than Eric Thor. Way more. So far, so good. But let's see if we could find some contradictions here. Okay. All right. So certain personality types learn lessons from their personal histories, but they see little purpose in entertaining the same regrets again and again. The thing is that from my perspective, I entertain the same regrets again and again because I have to remind myself what I've been through in order for myself to stay motivated to keep going. It's like it's not like survivor's guilt or survivor's remorse. It's more like survivor's recognition. Like I, as a turbulent type or as a shadow focused ENTP, I have to constantly prove to myself that my like I can't let my pain go to waste. I can't let the pain of my past go to waste. It has to be worth something. All of my suffering as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, had dealing with homelessness, dealing with drama, dealing with fighting, dealing with poor health, dealing with just no money constantly, dealing with a, a really bad situation with my ex-wife, uh, dealing with her solipsism and just constant, and dealing with bullshit at the church or my family, just drama, drama, drama. But I got through it all, and it has to be worth something. It's because it's like, from my INTJ Shadows perspective, it's like, wow, you were really set up for failure. You know what I'm saying? It was just this, whole setup for failure bullshit, right? Well, let's not deal with being set up for failure anymore, right? But the thing is that, like, how do I know I'm not being set up for failure later? I have to remember where I've been. I have to remember what I've suffered so that I don't allow myself to suffer in the same way. And as a result, I've noticed that, especially given the living virtue of the ENTP, according to the temples, the heart temple, is compassion. In order for me to be compassionate, which is why I give away so much free content, in order for me to be, compassionate, having, the compassion is really stemmed from I just don't want anyone else to live the past that I've had. I don't want people to suffer in the exact same way that I have. I'm trying to avoid that suffering, basically. And a lot of people just don't understand that. And I end up having, again, people are like, well, why don't you let go of your pain? And I'm like, because I need it. It's a reminder of what I've been through. Because, think about it, an ENTP is really afraid of being weak. And if you're a weak ENTP, you're likely shadow focused because you've had people keep you down instead of actually help you develop your introverted sensing and get stronger. My parents wouldn't let me get into martial arts as a child. Yet I would watch like every single one of the Three Ninjas movies, even the Crazy Surf Ninjas movies. I loved karate. I loved Karate Kid. It was awesome, but they never actually put me in it, or they'd tell me that we couldn't afford it or whatever, right? I didn't really have like I mean I only did Little League 1 year, but then again, like oftentimes my parents were like, "Well, you're not really interested in doing anything," and it's like, "Well, yeah, because you just forced me to go to church over and over and over again." And I don't want to have my mother even ran a dance crew at one point in time, and I wanted to join that for a while, but then like I don't know, I was too much of an embarrassment, I guess, so it probably didn't work out. And I don't judge her for that. I mean, she was in a rough situation with her youth group as it was, being a choreographer, and she put in a lot of effort. Didn't really get much out of it for herself, but she did a great job. The thing is, though, is that she had to be a mother to so many teenagers, and me, I was just kind of like an extra little liability on the side. So all right. However, problems may arise for them when their confidence turns into overconfidence. Oh, yeah. If we're assuming assertive is subconscious focus, let's talk about my INFJ mentor. He's subconscious focused, the ESTP subconscious, and ESTP subconscious focused INFJs often have problems with TI child God complex. He is the most overconfident person I have ever met, to the point where it's ridiculous. And he's kind of gross, and I don't want to be around him because of that. Assertive individuals may gloss over problems or details that can interfere with their goals and desired results. They may lean toward assuming all will be positive. No, I don't think he has that perspective, but I could see where that may be the case, maybe with the God complex. Assertive people also sometimes presume they are free to do much more than others would allow or tolerate. Yeah, this is accurate. I think that's an accurate statement for sure. If overconfident, these personality types may come to believe their confidence overshadows what others want. Yeah, I have to give that to them as well on that. So this is pretty accurate if we're assuming assertive is going in the direction of subconscious focus, right? So then we got a quote here. 94% of those with the assertive identity say they have a healthy ego compared to 58% of those with the turbulent identity. That's technically accurate because having a healthy ego means they've been able to ride life, in terms of success instead of riding and just surviving failure. So that's kind of more of an issue. But their confidence remains. It can help assertive people move forward where others might hesitate. People with this personality trait report more satisfaction with their lives. Well, obviously, because subconscious focused people are happier. They feel more assured of their abilities to handle the difficult and the unexpected. Okay, I don't know if that's true, but fair enough. Through this lens, they often create the kinds of success that matters to them. I would also agree with that. Yes. Turbulent personality, which I would be an ENTPT as I am shadow focused, right? Assuming that that the turbulent versus assertive is going to the proper direction, right? Turbulent individuals are success driven, perfectionistic, and eager to improve. Okay, yeah, that's me. They're always trying to counterbalance their self doubts by achieving more. Yeah, that's me. Just as they push themselves to become better, they're as likely to push their projects or efforts in the same direction. Yep, that's me. Turbulent personality types tend to notice little problems and often do something about them before they become larger ones. Basically, this is like a form of proactivity, but it's like almost too proactive in certain cases, and always trying to get ahead of it. And I think it's because turbulent personality types would be like these people who are constantly trying to avoid failure because they've dealt with failure a long time, which, guess what, is also the definition of being shadow focused. Okay. So 16 personalities presentation of T versus A makes a lot more sense when compared to Eric Thor's presentation of T versus A. Okay. Eric Thor doesn't know what he's talking about. These guys, if we're again, we're assuming the premise that turbulent versus assertive, turbulent being shadow focused, assertive being subconscious focused, is what the premise is. And if we're and by the way, we could assume that premise is true based on what 16 personalities here is stating. Based on these, everything seems to match. I haven't found any contradictions yet. 86% of those with turbulent identity say that comparing themselves to others usually results in negative feeling, compared to 58% of those with an assertive identity. I would say that's pretty accurate for the most part. Well, it's accurate for me, but it's not accurate for his subconscious focus big time. But this also applies to her as well, so I don't think that would be entirely the word. All right, so now it goes on. There are potential downsides to all this attention and achievement, always feeling the need to do more and have to do more and to be more. Yes, I always feel I have to be more constantly. Turbulent individuals can also get caught up in endless thoughts of criticism, slights, regrets. That's me. It's going to bog them down or motivate them to do better. It did bog me down for a while, but now it's just a source of motivation. Their sensitivity to potential problems can be useful, unless that's all they think about and the problems clutter their attention, which can happen to me. Turbulent personality types may compulsively scan for what go wrong instead of keeping their eyes on more positive targets on what could go right. So basically, what 16 personalities is doing here is that they're making the argument that you have glass half full versus glass half empty people. Glass half empty people are shadow focus. Glass half full are subconscious focus. And in terms of a sexual relationship, this is why you want glass half full people to be paired up with glass half empty people. It balances out and they benefit each other. Remember, being shadow focused provides with wisdom for the relationship and how to deal with failure, right? Versus somebody who is subconscious focused, they provide happiness and how to deal with success. That's ultimately what they bring to the table with the relationships. And again, 16 personalities approach to turbulent and assertive is a lot better than Eric Thor's. So far, it matches. But let's keep going. I want to get through this whole article first before we get into the next situation. We actually have a question, though, from the audience. Genesis asks, Chase, do you want to be subconscious focused? Surely you can stay in touch with your pain, but in a healthier way, maybe. I mean, yeah, sure, but it's not like I have access to many FI users in my life. Although, like, earlier today, I met a really cool INTJ who was like, hey, I noticed you broke your foot, because I did. I mean, I don't know if it's broken, though. Like, it's injured, though. I have a foot injury right now, so I'm actually, I'm wearing the boot again. And I had my knee scooter today, and I was in a coffee shop getting some work done, doing court documents and other crap. So, I spilled my tea on me, and she immediately got up from her seat and got me a napkin and basically cleaned me up, even though I basically embarrassed myself in front of everybody. But it was really nice to have my Effie child to see that FI sympathy experience, because I don't often get FI sympathy very much. If I had more FI sympathy in my life, then I probably would not really be in touch with my pain, because then I have this person who's actually going out of their way to ease my pain at the same time as a result of their sympathy. And if that's the case, I can let go of my pain and kind of rely on the experience that they're giving me and their sympathy that they're giving me, their conduit towards happiness, instead of relying on my own pain as fuel. Because the problem with me relying on my own pain as fuel is that in order for me to keep going, I have to actually add more pain in my life. Because if I run out of that fuel, which is what in my engine is running on pain as fuel, if I run out of pain, then I'll run out of motivation. You see, this is why Andrew Tate is also a shadow focused INTJ, because he has the exact same problem I do, right? He has the same exact problem. And, it's like someone asked him recently in an interview, it's like, hey, are you actually happy? And this shadow focused ENTP is like, no, what is happy? Like, he doesn't even believe happy exists. He says, like, happiness is just absence of sorrow, which is also my exact perspective. I also have that same point of view as well. However, a subconscious focused ENTP would say different, because they'd be the glass half full instead of the glass half empty. You see what I'm saying? So pain and stress ends up becoming the fuel for a shadow focused person, where it's the opposite with a subconscious focused person. So no, pay attention. No, INTJ focused ENTP. No, God. So stress may have a bad reputation, but turbulent types around the world just show how much of a powerful motivator it can be. Sure. Careful and attentive people are always important to society and keep it safe. At the same time, a fear of stagnation can bring about great change. Turbulent individuals beautifully cover both. When these personalities balance their worries and concerns with positive action, they're likely to prove themselves to be of great value. Okay. All right. So let's all bring it together. Oh, I must have misspoke. My bad. My bad if I misspoke. I apologize. So yeah. So I guess you could do the Willy Wonka ENTP thing of strike that, reverse it, right? So yeah. Let's actually talk about shadow focus and unconscious a little bit more. You already heard me speak about a lot of traits, within the context of this stream so far. And glass half empty versus glass half full, dealing with failure versus dealing with success on a regular basis. A lot of it has to do with the environment, the circumstances, the people in your life, especially during your childhood. Were you forced in a situation to deal with consistent failure, or were you in a situation where you had to deal with consistent success and manage that? Either way, your brain will adjust your focus over time. And you can see this in terms of deadly sins versus living virtues. And then also we have the poles, and I'm not going to really talk about it very much now in the cutting edge, but we're going to save it for later lectures. But cognitive focus, as much as you may see like a double, like if you're subconscious focused, you're really seeing a double helping of your ego. Basically, it's like having almost two of each of your functions providing more. And then some of those subconscious traits really make your ego stand out a lot more. But if you're more balanced as a person, then you're obviously going to be more shadow focused. Now, assertive versus turbulent, is it a really good way to actually measure whether or not you're subconscious focused or shadow focused? I'd say that the jury is still out. The reason why is that I understand what Eric Thor is trying to do. The problem is that we don't have a specific authority on assertive versus turbulent. You could say that 16personalities.com is that authority, and if that's the case, and based on these definitions, they definitely do fit the argument of subconscious versus shadow focused. At least I would say 80% match. So at least they got Pareto principle backing them up. But there's still a few issues here and there. Not only that, people can change their cognitive focus over time. Their environments change. People change over time. They grow within the other four sides of their mind. So assertive versus turbulent, it's really, people take it like, okay, this is how I'm always going to be. They don't understand that these things can change over time. And change can be difficult for some people. I know that change is difficult for me, for example, because I am my suffering, and I take my suffering with me everywhere I go, and I'm not willing to let go of it. But the thing is that I don't exactly have reason to in my life. I don't have any reason to let go of that suffering, or even, so, it requires a third party to do that, right? And I often don't have that opportunity, mostly because I'm just so focused on being wise, right? As a result, you could also say that King Solomon, who is an INTJ focused ENTP, he also, within his book Ecclesiastes, he's also making that same exact argument, right? So assertive versus turbulent, yeah, you can use it. It's a starting point to help determine cognitive focus, but it would not be the end all be all. We'd have to really look at cognitive origins. Uh, then there's two of them per the four temples. We'd have to look at living virtue and deadly sin, and then which one of those correspond more so with subconscious focus versus shadow focus. Because, for example, if you're an INTP but you're subconscious focused, more assertive, well, you're a more gluttonous INTP. Versus if you're shadow focused, you tend to be more greedy, right? And it's the same thing with living virtue. My living virtue is compassion, and I would be twice as compassionate if I was ISFJ focused, right? But I'm not. I actually have a mixture of vainglory with compassion. So I end up behaving more like Klaus Michelson from the originals on the Netflix show, the vampire show. So, does it anger when people tell you to relax? Absolutely, it does. And David Goggins is also an ENTP. Uh, yeah, yeah, I don't like my concerns being dismissed either. It's like they're taking my NI nemesis choice away. They're not listening to my TI parent either. They just telling me to chill out, and I'm like, well, okay, I'm not comfortable with this. Bye. And at that point, Andrus, you just got to be willing to take your SI inferior attention and just take it elsewhere, because it's like, I'm giving you attention, go away. You have to really use your FI trickster to summon as much personal self-worth as you can to understand that your attention is the most valuable thing inside your soul. You're just not going to give that to just about anyone. And that's just kind of how it is. So that's like that's another issue. So yeah, like I said, use assertive versus turbulent as just a starting point, folks, but it is not the end all be all. Like really the temples and ultimately what's becoming octagram, that's going to be the end all be all of determining cognitive focus. But for right now, just think about it, okay? Are you glass half empty or a glass half full person throughout your life? Have you had to confront failure more than success? Are you used to success more than failure? That kind of a thing. That matters. And just kind of, it's like a pessimism versus an optimism, right? Shadow focused people are way more pessimistic than they are optimistic. They are optimistic when they are subconscious focused. All of these things matter, and these are just indicators. Yeah, you could use assertive versus turbulent. The thing is, like, how do we even test for assertive versus turbulent properly? My TE critic has a lot of problems with the testing because oftentimes it follows people's ego investments, which is a problem. And especially if we're just going to listen to Eric Thor project his INFJ onto every human being out there, that also could be problematic as well. Because I've just shared these two resources with you, and they're reputable. 60 Personalities is the most reputable resource on the internet, and Eric Thor is a popular YouTuber who talks about MBTI on a regular basis. The problem is that both of them completely conflict. What's the truth, right? So when we're looking at Jungian analytical psychology and helping to determine cognitive focus, like there's not really a standard, and you have to just kind of figure out using logic which one is the way to go. So yeah, you can use assertive versus turbulent, guys, but only as a starting point, and it's not the end all be all. And you might only get 80% of the way there in determining cognitive focus. But really, I just recommend you guys wait until we have octagram up and then the temples and the new vectors added to the type grid, because we'll actually be able to answer those questions appropriately in the near future. So yeah. All right. Okay. I think that's it for this episode. I think I've driven my point down in terms of assertive versus turbulent. Just don't rely on tests for it. Remember, it's a starting point, and use some of the indicators that I've shared from this episode to get you started. In the meantime, wait till we finish temple exploration. and get that added to Ucha, and we'll get that handled. Yeah, like we do have a lot of discussion around the logic of the guided mode on the Discord, guys. So you guys might want to check that out. Like, get on the Discord and actually have that discussion. It's in the typology section of the Discord, those channels. That would be great if you guys could get involved in that. So, all right. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching tonight's episode. I'll see you guys next month for the July episode of the Cutting Edge Podcast. This is C.S. Joseph, obviously signing off. #cliche. Later.